All right, let's get started here. So thank you everyone for being here. My name is Andrew. I'm a VCIO at Smart Dolphins, which means mostly I'm talking about IT strategy, building roadmaps, consulting on business IT. And SD, or Smart Dolphins, is a managed service provider. We serve medium-sized businesses all throughout BC on a variety of technology-related topics, 365 being a major focus for us. And a trend in the industry now is towards user empowerment. What one person can do with the right tools and knowledge is immense. Learning is probably the number one way that you can gain leverage from your IT, and things change rapidly. OneNote being no exception, which I think is a big part of why we have a nice big crowd here today. There's lots of potential in the software that we're already using, and integrations are always growing. Chris and I were just kind of talking about how, OneNote's great, but it's the fact that it fits into everything else that Microsoft does that makes it so powerful. And you often have so much more power than you do realize, and you don't need to make huge changes. You just need to know a lot about what you can do with the tools you have at your fingertips. So we're always looking for ways to serve our clients and the broader business community better. And with that goal in mind, we bring you today's presentation. I have a couple of training events coming up here that I'd like to share with you. Brand new session for us, Identity Security Essentials, which kind of goes over one of Microsoft's major fundamental principles is that identity is the main security perimeter now, just kind of going into some depth with that. And then we have some sessions we already do, Excel Beyond the Basics on October 20th, and then cybersecurity user level training, which we recommend everybody get their staff to do on some regular interval. We're even seeing in some cybersecurity insurance renewals that they're putting that in as a question. Are you doing regular cybersecurity training and phishing training for your staff? So if you want to get that started, October 27th is an opportunity for that, and we do that monthly. So a couple of notes before we get started. Please put your questions in the chat. Chris will address those as they come up. We'll also have some QA time at the end. So if you have a larger question or something that's kind of a tangent to what we're talking about today, you can save questions for that. And after the event, we'll send out a recording and a feedback survey that would be really grateful if you could take the time to fill out for us. We're always looking to improve. So whatever you have to let us know, we'd be grateful to hear. So without further ado, it's my honor to introduce Christopher Stone. Chris has been teaching and consulting on Microsoft since 2007. He uses everyday language and examples to teach you the skills that you need. Chris has a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Victoria, and he approaches every class from the standpoint of how your organization works and how technology may be used to refine business process and greatly improve productivity. Thank you, Chris.
Helps if I unmute. Thank you very much for the introduction. Much appreciated to everybody joining us here today to talk about OneNote. If you've taken one of my sessions before, you'll remember that I don't like PowerPoint slides. So I'm going to get those out of the way here, and we are going to dive right into the actual tool in question here, which is today OneNote. Before we actually get started into how to use the particular tool, I do want to start by talking a little bit about the licensing for it and what's going on in the technical side of things for how Microsoft is moving forward with this particular piece of software. It's particularly important for OneNote because there is some major upcoming changes going on for OneNote. So with OneNote, it's a tool that's currently kind of available in two different ways. The licensing for it is effectively free. If you want to go to your house, pull up your home computer and use OneNote, you can actually go to Microsoft's website. You're allowed to download it and use it for personal use for free. They don't charge you at all for it. You just have to have a Microsoft account. And you can start using it today. And I'm actually going to show a couple of examples today where, I use this for my personal use case. Here's my shopping list that I have for it. So it's not a work-only tool. But there's a kind of a second piece to OneNote, which is that it's also part of Microsoft Office. So if you have a Microsoft 365 subscription, you're getting Microsoft Office as part of that. When you install Microsoft Office, it will also install OneNote, and you'll be able to use it that way as well. So while you can think of it as a paid business application, in some sense, it's also not at the same time. But generally speaking, you're going to have this as part of your Microsoft Office package in a work environment. And that's how you're going to get into this and start using it. And I don't want to say that the paid package gives you more functionality, but the work integration with Microsoft OneNote and the fact that we have access to things like, Teams and SharePoint gives us places to, for example, store OneNote files that can be shared. So there's some direct benefits to having those business licenses around Microsoft 365 when it comes to using OneNote. But it's not like there's a feature, for drawing with a pen that only works if you have the paid application. All of the functionality inside of OneNote kind of works regardless of whether or not you're on that personal version or if you have the business version. Now, there are, at this point in time, depending on how you're counting it, 3 or 4 different versions of OneNote. And I'm not kidding. It is an absolute mess. There is an application called OneNote for Windows 10. This can be found in the Windows Store on a computer, a Windows 10 or Windows 11 machine these days. If you go to the Windows Store and you search for, OneNote, you can grab a copy of OneNote for Windows 10. Again, this is more like the free version. Then there's the version that gets installed as part of Microsoft Office. So, this is the on my computer OneNote, the OneNote application that gets kind of bundled with Microsoft Office. If you've got Word and Excel and PowerPoint, you've got a copy of OneNote. A third way that we access OneNote these days is through the browser. So there's also a browser-based version of OneNote available for us that we can use to access it. And if you count it, there's also versions on your cell phones, right? You can download OneNote on a cell phone. Android, Apple, doesn't matter. Just go into the store and grab that. Again, it doesn't cost any money. There's no like $4.99 charge for the app or anything. You just download it, install it. If you're going to use it for personal use, you sign in with your standard, Microsoft personal account. If you're going to use it for work use, you sign in with your work email, and you'll have access to the kind of the OneNote concept within that mobile form factor. Now, this is very, very confusing. Thank you, Microsoft, for making this hard for us. So to make it even more confusing, all of this is going away except the mobile applications in the web version. The 2 desktop applications for OneNote, the Office one and the OneNote for Windows 10, are being unified. That's the official term Microsoft is using for this. And we're going to get what's called the OneNote Unified application. It's actually already started rolling out. Some users, depending on the organization, depending on if you're, first release or general release or slow release, some users might have already seen a prompt to go ahead and download that, get it installed. If your organization is a bit larger and maybe, what's installed on your computer is controlled by, a central IT department, perhaps that isn't happening yet. You're stuck on the old one until, they refresh an image or something like that. But the process is already happening to roll out this unified app. And essentially the unified app is a reversion. So originally we started out with the with the one that installs as part of Microsoft Office. Then they wanted this Windows one that was for everybody. And people didn't really like it as much as they liked the Microsoft Office version. So what they've done is they've essentially gone back to the Office version, but they've taken a couple of the features that people really liked in the OneNote for Windows 10 functionality and brought that back into the original one, and they're just getting rid of it. So there'll just be one app going forward. These 2 versions that exist are essentially end of life as of 2025 is the announced date. So you can still use them for a couple more years, but don't hang on to them for too long. They are going to kind of be phased out. You'll get the unified app and you'll be able to go forward. Now, none of that really matters. It's confusing. It's complicated. Some people might, wonder why over here you can insert something, but you can't insert that same thing over on this side. But for the most part, the actual applications are almost exactly the same across the spectrum. So let's get into what is OneNote and what can we do with it? What are the next kind of little things? Obviously, we can click and type somewhere. I don't think you guys need to be taught how to do that, but there's a ton of other functionality here in OneNote that I do want to talk about in order to kind of best take advantage of this tool. Personally, I've been using OneNote now for, what year is it? 2022. So I've been using it for 13 years. I hate paper. There's actually somebody in this class that is aware of that. Hi, Leonie, who has known me for almost that entire time period and has known that if, somebody walks up to me and hands me a piece of paper, I go, I don't want it. I want everything in OneNote. This is my control over information, over my personal life and over my professional life. I use it for almost everything. And so I really want to show you how I can take advantage of that, how you can take advantage of it within your work environment. Maybe you take that home as well. It's up to you. The first thing to know about OneNote, and the obvious thing, is that it's a note-taking tool. This should be pretty obvious from the name. When it comes to OneNote, though, I do want to kind of break it down how this works and some of the pieces that maybe were a little bit obvious to some of you. Maybe they weren't. Maybe you figured this out yourself. Maybe you didn't. The first is that OneNote isn't a single notebook. It's not like picking up a paper notebook and just having one notebook. OneNote is capable of hosting multiple notebooks. If I look on the left-hand side here, I've got a list of my notebooks. I keep mine pinned. You don't have to, but I switch back and forth between them frequently enough that I keep mine pinned here. And within each of those notebooks, I can set up different things. So for example, my last name is Stone. The Stone notebook I share with my wife. She doesn't have access to my programming notebook or my personal notebook or my training notebooks, but I share that one particular notebook with my wife. And then some of my other notebooks get shared with other people. I don't actually keep them here. Some of those I access through the web application because it's more convenient for that. For example, when I go into a client's office and work in a particular, with a particular company, I'll often set up a OneNote book to collaborate directly with them. And I will have that notebook either pinned here in my desktop application, or I'll use the web-based version to access that, so that at the end, when I leave, they've got all of my notes as part of whatever it was that I was doing with them. It makes it very easy to collaborate on what's going on, especially around things like project management, activities, schedules, things like that. Now, knowing that I've got multiple workbooks and that I can share them with different people is great. This notebooks menu, you can expand them and see the different sections that appear within each of the workbooks if you want. But that's the next layer down. So I've got my notebooks, and then within each notebook, I have what are called sections. And, these are as easy as clicking the button to spin up another section that you would like. And this is a lot like, the tabs, those colored tabs we had in high school and university, if you're old enough to have done things on paper like I am. But in a digital sense, it's just a representation of that, but it's a way to organize our notebooks, right? Oftentimes we'll have a notebook that spans multiple different concepts, multiple different ideas, and we can break those concepts down into different sections. And then when it comes to the actual information, we have what are called pages. This is me typing on a page, right? It's not particularly complicated. And the pages by default in the Office application hang out on the right-hand side here. I can add some additional pages, but don't be kind of fooled by the fact that you're thinking about a piece of paper. These pages aren't actually limited by the physical constraints of the physical world. If I want to have another note over here, I can. And if I want to be silly, I can take this and move it even further over. I can scroll over as much as I want. I'm not restricted to the physical size of a piece of paper. I can have notes that span and scroll. Now, is that a good idea to span them, sideways like that? Probably not. But on the other hand, it's often great to have them go down, right? Scroll down. So in my case, my Costco shopping list can be absolutely massive sometimes. So I've got the ability to scroll up and down. I'm not limited in that sense. The other kind of idea that is hard often if you're first starting out with a digital note-taking tool to kind of wrap your head around is the fact that all of this is reorganizable, right? It's not like I write a note on a page and it can never move afterward. If I realize that this note later should be over here, I can simply, cut and paste it over into this box. Or if I don't want to have them together, I can simply drag the box that this note is in over to where I want here. And the nice thing about having them in separate boxes is that if I add more stuff, it is smart enough to know that this note is below this note. And instead of just kind of writing over top of the other note, it's going to slowly push that note down, giving the top note a little bit more space, which is a really kind of useful thing to have with a piece of software like this. But it goes beyond just the actual content that's on the page. If this page, is the top page in my section and I don't want it to be anymore, I can simply, drag it down, make it one of the lower pages and have a different page at the top now, right? And even beyond that, if this page, it needs to be in a different section, I can simply, just drag things around and I can have it wherever I want it to be within my notebooks and even between notebooks if I wanted to. If I want to take this page and move it into my personal notebook, I can, just drag it over into my personal notebook and put it in my general tab and have it appear at the very, very bottom of this stuff down here like that. I'm going to pop back to my training one here. I can also do this without drag and drop by right-clicking on things. There's a move or copy functionality on pages. You can click on that. You can say, I want to move it here. I can either move it or I can just completely copy it. And that'll leave a copy of the page in the original notebook that it came from if I want to. That can sometimes be helpful, especially if you ever have, stuff that you want to work on privately in your personal notebooks and then dump into a shared notebook with people later. You can do that move and copy. You can also do that with the tabs themselves. You can move or copy those as well. There's also a merge option, which is very similar to move or copy, but it just, picks up, changes that might have occurred, or if there's similar pages with the same name that have different information, it can help you kind of do that. I've almost never used it, so I wouldn't think too much about it, but it's there. The other piece of this puzzle around this is that I've got, page one, and I've got, my data collection page. Unlike a paper notebook, I have a bit more functionality on these pages. And one of the most useful pieces of functionality in OneNote is the ability to link not just to, Google or YouTube or wherever, but to other pages within the OneNote book, right? It's very common that we'll have a set of information that relates to another set of information. So for example, in my personal notebook, I'm just going to use that as an example a lot. I've got my food here, but my food links off to my meal plan page. And my meal plan page, some of the recipes I'm keeping track of link off to the recipes that I've kept as part of that. Right? Instead of me having to figure out where I put everything, I can simply just paste the links into the actual content. And it's very easy to do this in OneNote. A couple of different ways that you can do this. The first way you can do this is with square brackets and typing in the name of the page that you want to link to. And as long as you've linked to it, it will jump up to the page with the name there. Now, a lot of people don't like typing them in like that. So you can also just use the insert and there it is in the middle, link option. And if you do that insert link option, it will let you either, paste in an address like a website or something, or you can select a location, a place that you want to link to within your workbooks. Maybe you want to link to your data collection page. You can go ahead and insert a link to that. And now that's clickable and it will take you over to the data collection page. This is a great way to add information or relate information while still having it nicely separated. Something that wasn't, possible in a notebook, right? If I have a paper notebook, I'm going to flip up to page 43. It essentially becomes like one of those old choose your own adventure books where you're constantly flipping through the pages. This just makes that whole process, much, much simpler. And you can see in the concept around, for example, the food thing that I showed you, where, I can link from one thing into another thing, and it can be very, very helpful. If I want to, make my grocery list, I probably need to know what my meal plan is. If I'm making my meal plan on my grocery list, I might also need the recipes that I'm making so that I can go grab the ingredients and pull those in. That pretty much is the basic foundational pieces that you need to know about how OneNote works. You've got notebooks, you've got tabs or sections, you've got pages, and they can be linked together. There's a few more kind of advanced topics around this that I'm just going to mention now before we get into actually the content on the pages, which is also very important. The first thing I want to mention is that for sections, there's also the ability to create what are called section groups. And a section group is, a group of sections. I often use these for archival purposes personally. If I've got in my programming tab, which is just my general kind of work tab, I don't know why I've left it named programming. Originally, it was for programming only. Now it's for more than that, but I never renamed it. But in there, once I've finished work with a particular client or on a particular project, oftentimes I'll have a tab for old data that I don't want to get rid of. I don't want to delete the data, but I don't need section 3 anymore. So I just move it by dragging it into the section group. And that way, I can move that stuff out of the way and keep my tabs up top nice and clean, but I can go back and access my historical sections when I need access to that data, or, when I'm searching, that data is still available. Another thing that we can do up here is on each section, we can change the colors for them. It assigns a default color, but it is possible to select colors. This is often great if you want to be consistent and have, particular, way of setting up a project OneNote, where the green tab is for, stuff about people, and the blue tab is for stuff about schedules, and the orange tab is for stuff about money or something. And then color coordinating can just be a nice way to, help your brain out rather than having to read every time. To make that a little bit easier. The other thing that we can do in here and this is one of the things I want to warn you about in OneNote, is there is an option for sections to password protect a section in OneNote. So say there's a section on money here, the money section, whatever. And I want to keep that, private. I'm sharing this workbook with, 4 or 5 other people, but only me and one other person should be looking at the money section. A lot of people's first thought is, oh, I can password protect this section. So they click on this. It pops up this password protection option where I can set a password up for this. But there's this nice little caution right here. If you lose or forget the password, OneNote cannot recover your data. Remember that passwords are case sensitive. If I password protect this section and then lock it, which I can actually do by popping this up and locking it here. There we go, like that. Now somebody's coming in, it's password protected. They click it, they don't know the password. It's essentially gone. There are, let's say, illicit ways to unlock this kind of thing, but you're generally not going to have access to them in a normal work environment. So forgetting these passwords can be very, very, very bad. So I really don't recommend that you do that. Instead of password protecting sections, so I'm going to actually remove the password here on this one. What I would generally recommend that people do is set up a second workbook. You've got the ability to have multiple workbooks. If you need a separate space for secure information, set up a separate workbook, only share it with the people that need access to it. And that way people won't be able to see that information if they're not supposed to. And that is a reversible process, right? If somebody, were to win the lottery and leave the company, the IT department, or, your managed IT service provider at Smart Dolphins can go into wherever that file has been stored and SharePoint or Teams or OneDrive or whatever it happens to be, and grant access to additional people. It's a way that can be fixed if there's a problem. So I really warn people off using those password protections in OneNote. Even though they're there, I'm not a big fan of them. It can be a bit of a poor choice. Another thing that I want to talk about that has nothing to do with sections is these pages. You've seen me creating pages in my notebooks like this. It's fairly easy to do that, but within pages, there's a couple of extra options that are not so obvious. The first option is that you can actually make a page the sub page of something else. So if I drag one of these pages up, did it just a second ago, and now it's deciding it doesn't want to do it again. Get in my, oh, there we go. What I've done here by dragging this over is kind of indented it under the page it's above. And the benefit to this is that I can put multiple pages together and then collapse them or move them around. Oops. As a, oops, this is really bad idea to do with unnamed sections. Move them around within the thing. So if I collapse it, I can move it around and it will stay together like that. You have to collapse it first before you move it. Otherwise it doesn't like that. It's not a big thing, but sometimes, when I'm coming up with a project, I'll have, a page of information, it's scrolling too far. I want to break it up into more different pages without kind of splitting them up. You can use this indent functionality. You can even indent up to twice. You can have 2 levels of indentation if you want for various components of the pages there. The other thing that we can do with pages is rather than just having blank pages, it's also possible to have pages with templates or, predefined look and feels to them. A lot of that has to do with the page color, which is found in the View tab up on the ribbon here. If I wanted a page color that's kind of the, green or purple, I can change that. You don't have a color picker. It's just these colors available to us. And I believe that's true even in the other versions. Yeah, it's, oh, no, there is a more color option in the OneNote for Windows 10, but it's still not a ton. It's still kind of somewhat limited, but there are more color choices in there if you want to do that. That's why I said, some of the differences between these 2 versions of the application exist. The unified app will have some of both of them. So it'll be kind of a bit interesting to see which ones they decided to get rid of and which ones they decided to keep. But, we have some basic color changing. We can put lines. I actually personally don't like the lines. I think the whole point of the lines is for people who use styluses. If you've got one of those fancy tablets with a stylus, having lines on the screen to write on can help you keep your writing a little bit more consistent. But I don't think most people use the ruled lines outside of that. They are there. I know in school-based situations, education-based situations, the graph paper can be helpful here as well, but they're there too. But what I was saying is that you can actually set up, templates for pages where you have kind of color, page, and even potentially some content set up for this. And why have they moved this on me? Where did they put that? Insert page templates. There, it's hiding out. So I click this, it'll pull up a thing. There's some templates that are there by default. So for example, you may meet detailed lecture notes, right? It's got a little background picture. It's got some sections built in. But the big benefit isn't the built-in ones for these templates here. It's if you want to use the templates, like for example, in your business, you've got, a particular meeting template that you guys like using. You can set it up once and then you can go and, my setup page to do other stuff to do. whatever you want. And then you can save the page as a template, give it a name, and then you can create based off of that template you've created infinitely going forward. So I just like to mention that page templates exist. It's not hard to set them up. You can kind of figure them out for yourself if you'd like, but they're there if you want to take advantage of them for your OneNote. I do want to remind you, if you have any questions at any point during the session, don't hesitate to just type those into chat. OneNote's not a particularly complex tool, but sometimes you've got a particular use case that you want to ask about. So feel free to type them in to chat and we can talk about them. Now that we've got our notebooks, we've got our sections and our section groups, we've got our pages set up, really at the end of the day, the last piece of this puzzle is the ability to put content on the actual pages. Obviously, I could put stuff wherever we want. Why is this page not interacting with me right now? Okay, well, my cursor has decided to disappear for some reason. Okay, it's a bit weird. Try that again. Not that one. There we go. Okay, we'll just go here. My cursor's back. At the end of the day, the actual content on the pages is the important part for OneNote. And there's lots of things we can put on the page. Clearly, we can type. Clearly, we have the ability to, change the font size and the color. We can do bulleted lists and numbers, all the basic stuff we would expect from Word, right? Nothing fancy here. The only time I really use this, and the reason I like to mention this, is that oftentimes when I'm drafting things that are going to end up in Word or PDF, I'll often put them together in OneNote first, right? If I'm typing up a proposal for a client, or if I'm typing up an RFP for somebody, what I'll often do is I'll come in here, and I like the fact that I've got kind of the free form ability to move data around where I want. So, I'll type out my paragraphs and I'll have some notes about it over here. But the nice thing is that with this basic formatting and the styles, if I then want to, let me give it a heading here, some stuff, some formatting, list of items. Because it's all the Microsoft ecosystem, if I copy this and open up Word decided it wanted to open up on my other screen here. 1 second, let me just get it over here. There we go. When I paste this in, it's going to maintain all of that formatting, right? It's going to know that this is a heading because it uses the same functions that that everything else did, right? This is a heading. It's got the the normal collapsible bits that are part of the headings in Word. It's kept my bulleted lists. If I had italicized or bolded or whatever, all of that's going to come over between the pieces of software. So I really like using this for drafting up documents. Having notes or having reference information over here can be a great way to get that data ready. Then when I'm ready, I can copy and paste it into Word and know that I'm not going to lose or have to redo all of my stuff at the end of it. But it does go a little bit further than that. Rather than just basic text and styles, there's another section here that's probably the most important section for me in OneNote, and that is the tags. We saw this briefly when I was looking at my grocery list. What I have in here is next to the different items, I actually have checkboxes. And that kind of thing is part of the tag system in OneNote here. If I have, where did my stuff go that I had earlier? Where did I throw that? Oh God, stuff that I typed out. Okay, well, whatever. This already uses it actually to a little bit. If I can do a number list or whatever here, but if I want something to be a tickable checkbox, I can add this tag to it. So here's a tickable box. Can't spell, but there we go. And these, I just interact with them with my mouse. Is it done? Is it not done? You're like, oh, great, it's a tickable box. If I wanted to introduce this on something that didn't have it, you simply just highlight it or click on the line, and you can click the tag to add the box. You'll also notice that the tags have keyboard shortcuts. The first 8 tags anyways are the control numbers, control 1, control 2, control 3, control 4, control 5 through the list. And each of these tags can be used for different reasons. And there's actually a whole bunch of different tags available. The tick box is one type of tag, but it's often common to say, this is a tickable item, but it's also really important. So I'm going to control 2 and add the star tag to it. Whereas the one below it is just a not important item. Maybe this is a question item and I tag it with control 3, which is the question mark tag. And you're thinking, okay, it just puts a little symbol next to it. The only one that's really interactable is the tick box. And you're right, except for the fact that we have the ability to find tags within OneNote. So this is a really useful piece if you're trying to pull things together across multiple pages for something like a project or a team organization tool. If I want to look for anywhere where, maybe I've missed a tick box, I can click this find tags. And on the right-hand side, I get this tag summary. It's essentially a search tool for my tags. I can say, group tags by the tag name, group tags by the section they're in, group tags by the title. But I can also say, show only unchecked items. And when I'm off here, I can say, where are the unchecked items in this notebook down here, and it will show them to me, and I can click on them and it will take me to all of the unticked, or it will take me to whichever one I've clicked on. And I can say, okay, is that done? Why is that not done? Okay, now it's done, and I can tick it off. And now in the search, well, I have to close it down and open it up again. I can tell that there aren't any more items that have been missed. Or, if I am having a conference call with somebody and I had a list of questions that I'd set up across various different pages from information they sent me, I could say, where are all of my question tags? And I can click on them and it will, again, sorry if I'm in a different place, it'll take me to where that question tag is so that I can then follow up on that information. Maybe once I'm done, I take the question tag off and I type in the answer they gave. Right, and get rid of the tag or whatever I want to do for that. Where are my important items? Where are my remember for later items? Where are the contacts? Where are the phone numbers? What are the passwords? Is this project A, project B? You can see there's some personal stuff in here. Colleague makes a movie recommendation or a book recommendation, write it down. Later I can just check my tag summary. Doesn't really matter where I put it. I can also search different places. I only want to search a section. I want to search notebook. I want to search all of my notebooks. I want to search stuff I've only done recently, older stuff. And you can even actually create a summary page, which will spin up an entirely new page that's essentially the results of this tag summary so that you can have a place to work on it. You'd be like, okay, I don't care about those, but I wanted to know about these ones here. And so it'll pull it all together if you want to do that. They're all linked technically. So you can actually click on these and have them take you to those places, just like we saw the linking earlier. So really, really powerful form of tags that were part of this. There was also, and this doesn't really work very well anymore, I'm suspecting that this will probably be removed in the unified app. There was some integration with flagging things for today and tomorrow, the red flags. The benefit to this is that you could then go to Outlook and see the item in Outlook, but Outlook tasks have been replaced by To-Do, so this doesn't really work very well anymore. And I suspect it'll be changed either into the new system or removed entirely in the Unify app for that. There's an email page button. I don't think you guys really care about that, but it's there. Yeah. Dictation. This one's kind of nice. I can dictate. Go ahead and type something here with my voice if I wanted to. I don't really recommend using it to record meetings because it doesn't necessarily know who's speaking. which kind of makes it a bit of a challenge. But if you want to dictate into the system, the dictation tool is quite good. It's in the desktop version of the app. I don't believe it was in the app version, the Windows 10 version, and I think it recently got added to the web version. If I go check where, yeah, the dictation button is there. You just have to allow it to use your microphone, and you can actually dictate into the web version as well if you want to take advantage of that. So those are all over the place, but they are great there. Turn off. There we go. Okay. So dictation, that one's going to survive the jump to the unified app. In fact, they're actually adding new functionality as part of that in the unified app as well. Microsoft's been applying their AI machine learning voice recognition stuff to all of that. So that stuff's actually going to get better in the next little bit here. I would suspect that the dictation will become even nicer. I don't know a lot of people that dictate their notes, but if you're one of those people, you can go ahead and do that. In addition to dictation, I do want to mention under the Insert tab, there is also the ability to include audio and video recordings as part of your OneNote book. I do not recommend you ever include a video recording as part of your OneNote book. The reason for this has to do with the way that the file gets stored. It ends up essentially taking that video clip and embedding it inside of the workbook, not separate as a separate video file. And the problem with that is that if you record more than 2 seconds, the OneNote file goes from being a couple of megabytes in size to potentially very, very large. And then things like syncing, things like opening it up and closing it down can start to take a lot longer. So even though it had a video record functionality, I really don't recommend you use it. But record audio actually does work really nicely. You can just click this, it'll start an audio recording, it'll record the audio for you. When you're done, you click stop, and then that audio clip can be played back at any point that you want in the future, and it will just kind of store it as part of the file. And these they can still be big if they're really long, but they're not huge. One of the neat options with this is that if you actually turn the right options on in your settings, audio search, you can enable the search to actually look for the words inside the voice recordings that have been made this way, which can be kind of neat. But you do have to actually turn it on. It's not on by default in the OneNote settings there. I don't use it a lot, but if this is the way that you want to record a meeting, not the dictation, if you want to record a meeting, you've got a microphone on your laptop, you can record it and be able to play the sound back a little bit later. I would recommend if you're going to record meetings that you don't generally do it with just like the default built-in mic on a laptop. Those are generally very designed to pick up in front of the laptop, not a room people sitting around a table. You probably want to have a dedicated meeting room mic if you are going to be recording those into here on a regular basis. Can you download these clips on the page? Absolutely. If you have it, you can always right click on it and save as, and it will pull up the normal save to your computer prompt, and you can extract those audio files or the video files. Be aware they are in a strange format. It's the Windows Media Audio or Windows Media Video, WMV, video files. So they don't necessarily work with everything right off the bat. You might need to convert them into other stuff. Again, I'm hoping that changes eventually, but it remains to be seen what Microsoft is going to do with that one. Good question there, Jessica. Thank you for asking that. Anyways, that's the audio recording, video recording pieces there. Of course, we can put a ton of other stuff on these pages as well. Let me go to a blank page here. One of the things that we can put on pages is files, but I do want to show you how this works because it's not necessarily the way that you think, or rather it does it in a very strange manner that you're not going to be accustomed to. So I can insert an attachment. So let's say I wanted to grab a Word document I had in my, my documents somewhere. I could grab a Word document. Do I have anything that's, I have no idea what this document is. Okay, I'm just going to attach the file, and it goes in as an attachment. The benefit to this is that it's small. I can double click on it. It will open up and it will just work. The other way that we can do this, and the more common thing that we see in OneNote, is this option here called File Printout, which is a file attachment, but instead of attaching the file, it's going to attach, I really should just make sure that this file is okay. One second, let me, okay, it is totally fine. It has some words to a Rickroll in it here with cat sounds in it for some reason. I really don't know what's going on with this. Okay, but what a file printout does is essentially it takes the file and it prints it and puts a copy of it on the page. And the benefit to this is that then you can either, type some notes over here about it. Maybe you're referring to a file that's over here. You can't actually type on it because it's not text in this case, but you can put notes over top of it if you want to drag stuff over top of it. But it's essentially a picture. Oops, done here. There we go. It's essentially a picture of the file that I can then interact with. This is especially useful if you use the drawing tools. You want to mark up, something on a particular page. And this will work for, Office files. It'll work for PDFs. It'll work for a bunch of different things. You can even do this from websites. If I go, to Amazon or whatever, I can file print. And one of the things that I can do is I can send it to OneNote. And I can print it to OneNote. And if I do that, it ends up looking like, let me stick that in the top section here. There we go. There's just the printout of the Amazon page as part of the thing. And then, like I said, you can mark it up, you can write notes about it, you can do whatever you want. So that's the file printout functionality versus the file attachment functionality as part of OneNote. Another thing we can do in here is embed spreadsheets and Visio diagrams. So let me create a new Excel. There we go. There's my new Excel. And this is kind of an updated thing. The file actually exists as a separate Excel document, one, auto sum, whatever down there. I save this file. The OneNote that I just closed because oh, no, I didn't close it. I think I went to the wrong screen. There we go. Is right there. And it will have the updated visual data from the Excel file there. And I can open it up again if I want and do some work in Excel, and it will show the stuff. It keeps flipping me over to the other screen every time I do that. It's kind of annoying, like that. And so it's just a great way to embed a living Excel document inside of here. Instead of being a printout that's static, that doesn't ever change, it will update as the Excel file gets updated, but you can interact with the Excel file whenever you want by simply double clicking on it. I don't know if I have a good Visio diagram to do this, but I might. There we go. Same thing with the Visio diagram. If I want to put a Visio diagram in here, I can do that. If I want to work on that diagram, I can double click on it and edit the Visio diagram if you have, obviously, if you have Visio installed on your computer. If you don't have Visio, you won't be able to edit the file. But if you have Visio installed, you can do that. Also usefully, we have, basic screen clipping stuff. If I want to take a picture of just part of a screen, that's fairly standard. I can bring pictures in here. If I want to bring in pictures that I've saved from somewhere, I can bring in pictures of, birthday cake, whatever. Online pictures, this will search the Bing image search if you want to do that. If you need a cat picture to cheer you up sometime, you can bring a cat picture in. I have no idea what it just tried to do there. I think it tried to convert the picture for some reason. I want a cat picture. Give me a cat picture. Oh, there we go. Like that. And online video. This is if you want to have video clips as part of your OneNote, this is the way to do it. Have it uploaded to a proper video service. If it's more like a public video, you could put it on something like YouTube. If it's more of a private video, you might want to use a surface like the Microsoft Stream, and then grab the link to that and embed it in the online video functionality here. So this ends up looking like this. Let me see if I can find a YouTube video that's about cars. Why not? And paste it in, and it will just pop the video file, and it will be playable from within OneNote, which can be very helpful. You know, if you're referencing something as part of some research you're doing, or as part of, you know, promotional clip for your organization or whatever it is, you can do that and then interact with it from there. But unlike the recording of the video, this file is stored in a third-party location. It's just kind of acting as a viewer for that, which means it's not causing any size issues or loading issues that are there. Questions. Will the spreadsheet, so we're talking back to here, will the spreadsheet be stored somewhere else on your computer? That entirely depends on where the actual OneNote piece is stored. If the OneNote is stored on your computer, yes. If the OneNote is stored kind of in a cloud-based environment, it'll store it wherever the OneNote file is, if you want to access that. But yes, it is stored somewhere as a separate file. When you open the Excel file, is it opening the original document, or is it only opening a copy? It depends on how you've brought it in. So if the existing Excel spreadsheet, you get to select the location, in which case it is opening the original. If it's a new spreadsheet, it's the new one. If it's a file attachment, if you're doing this with the file attachment, then it's going to be the copy of that point in time, not kind of an ongoing thing. So it kind of depends on the situation, but good question. When you're faced with taking text from picture on another language, if in English it works in other time to time. Oh yeah, so I haven't actually shown that particular functionality there yet, but if you do have a picture, so let me go ahead and grab an online picture of a business card, for example. Let's see if I can find one that's got some actual text on it. There we go. Okay, insert that in. One of the things you can do, and this is actually more useful if you're using this in the mobile format, because you'll take the photo with your cell phone and then you'll want the data off of the card later. One of the things you can do in OneNote is right click on photos, and there's an option called copy text from picture. This is optical character recognition. And if I do that, I can then paste the information next to it. It's essentially extracting the data from it. It's not perfect. So for example, it picked up all of this stuff here, but it didn't pick up this stuff over here. And I am not even going to try to pronounce your name. I apologize. As one of our attendees has pointed out, in English it works, but for non-English it often doesn't work. It really depends. It's kind of hit and miss outside of other languages. You can kind of help it along by having your settings for Office set to a different language, or your Windows settings set to a different language. If you have additional languages installed, it will often help us with that. But it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, you know, the vast majority of the development effort went into this for English, especially from Microsoft and OneNote at this point in time. The web stuff tends to be a little bit better for that for other languages, but I don't speak any other languages fluently, so I have a hard time testing that, unfortunately. But yeah, that is a good thing to point out there for pictures. Links, I mean, date and time stamps, that's not particularly exciting. Page templates we already saw. If your role, your job involves any sort of weird stuff, there are the access to various equations and all of the symbols that you might want to pull in. The last thing to mention about that is that using the drawing tool, you can actually, let me go to another one here. You can actually use a pen to insert mathematical equations. 1 + 1 / 3 equals 2 / 3. Like this. You can do ink to math, and it will, select ink. Oh, I'm supposed to do it in here, not in the actual thing. Can I select it and then do that? Ink to text. There we go. That did not pick up at all. Ink to math. There we go. Okay, it picked up, except it doesn't like how I write ones clearly, or twos. And so I would need to correct that. But it doesn't actually have me doing that very often. But you can do formulas and weird stuff in here if you want to. It works a lot better if you're using a stylus, because writing with a computer mouse is never going to be great, right? So that's in there. The last thing I want to talk about in here, or last two things I want to talk about in here, is that OneNote does also keep a history. This is something useful to know about. If you're editing a page over time, and it's really hard to show on these particular pages because I just created them. But if I go back to, for example, my grocery list, I can actually look at the recent edits, in the last 7 days, and it will show me what's changed in the last little bit. Or I can look at the page versions and go back and look at older copies of older pages if I want to go look at historical copies. It doesn't keep them forever, and it doesn't track like every single change exactly all the time. It's kind of a, on this day it looked like this, and on this day it looked like this kind of history. But it can be quite useful if you accidentally delete something and then you need to pull it back off of a page. A couple of weeks later, you could go back and look at an older version and go, oh yeah, okay, that's what I had in there. And then you can copy it or bring it back that way if you want. And then you can just turn it off when you're done. I also have this recent edits turned on. I guess I can just turn that off. Mark is red. Mark is red. There we go. Oh, there we go. Just close that to get rid of it there. It'll also kind of keep track of who's doing that, which is a very useful thing to have there. The last thing that I want to talk about is actually under view here. I'm using OneNote right now like this. One of the useful things that I can do is have two OneNotes open. So I've got one notebook. Oftentimes I'll have something open that I'm referring to. I'm working on something and I've got my notebook and I want to have it open. And this is the big situation, I've got something in this one and I want to have my meal plan open at the same time. What I can do is I can go to view and click new window, and I can have two open, one for the grocery list and one for the meal plan. And then I can use Windows 11's new features. You guys have seen this Windows 11's new features for placement of screens, some of the nice stuff. You can do different side panels to maximize things. It's kind of nice. But I've actually done this the wrong way. I wanted the grocery one to be the big one and the other one to be, I want it to be the big one. There we go. And that one on that side. There we go. And then I can unpin that and I can look at my meal plan on one side and make my grocery list on the other side while I'm doing that. And then when you're done, you can just close one. There's no saving in OneNote. It's kind of constantly saving. So you don't ever have to worry about losing that information in here like that. And at the end of the day, you end up with a nice grocery list, or you end up with, what have I got? Gift ideas from my wife, or, my notes about the Smart Dolphins training that I'm doing. Whatever it happens to be, you can store all of that information in here and get back to it quickly and search for it if you want, which is really useful. That about wraps up what I wanted to talk about today. There's lots more little things in OneNote that are potentially available. Don't hesitate to mess around with it, play around with it a little bit. It's a great tool to kind of get into. If I have one piece of advice for you, though, it's don't half use OneNote. If you have to really either go all in or just don't bother. With any digital note-taking tool, the moment you start splitting your notes into written down notes and digital notes, it just is going to make your life harder. So if you want to give this a good try, put away the paper notebook for a couple of weeks and give it a solid attempt before you kind of think about or make a decision on whether or not you want to use this tool. But it's got all the features that you need. It'll do everything you want. You can share it with your buddies. You can share it with your work and really kind of keep track of all your information, because that's a problem these days. We have way too much information that we have to deal with at this point. I will still stick around. If you guys have any questions, type them in chat. I'm going to hand it back to Andrew here to wrap, and then I will address any questions people type in afterwards. PowerPoint slides. Let's go back to wherever we were going here.
Awesome.
There we go. Oops, wrong display. There we go. Andrew, back to you.
Thank you, Chris. Is that working? Awesome. So yeah, before we wrap up, a couple of quick reminders. We've got the upcoming training, Identity Security Essentials. I think that's a great one for anyone who is interested in what they can do with their 365 security a little bit better. And then Excel Beyond the Basics, and of course, the cybersecurity user level training we recommend for everybody. And just a reminder, we do have a survey that comes out once this is all done, and feedback survey would be grateful for you to fill out. And if you do have any questions, please reach out. We do private training. We can do custom training, even if you have an interest in that. You can find us at smartdolphins.com/training or reach out at training@smartdolphins.com. Yeah, any questions, put them in the chat. Feel free to unmute, and Chris will give you a hand. But thank you everyone for coming today.